After the tattoo, everything changed. Prisoners were thrown into overcrowded barracks, wooden bunks. No mattresses, hundreds of bodies in one space. Sleep was rare, fear was constant, roll calls began before dawn, hours of standing still. In winter, frostbite. In summer, collapse. Those who fell were beaten. Those who could not stand were removed. Hunger was not a condition. It was a weapon. Food was carefully measured, not to sustain life, but to slowly weaken the body. A crust of bread, thin, dirty soup. Comma, sometimes nothing at all. Every day, prisoners calculated survival in bites. How long could they last? How many days before their legs stopped carrying them? Hunger consumed thoughts. It erased memories. It turned time into pain. Disease spread quickly through the camp, overcrowded barracks. No hygiene, no medicine. Typhus, dysentery. Open wounds that never healed. The sick were not treated as patients. They were treated as problems. Medical care was not meant to heal. It was meant to observe, to test, to experiment. Doctors watched bodies fail. Some injected chemicals. Some operated without anesthesia. Some simply recorded how long it took to die. Those who became sick were marked. A look, a note, a silent decision. And those who were marked did not return. In Auschwitz, hunger did not just kill the body. It destroyed the will to survive. Auschwitz ran on slave labor. The camp was not only a place of death, it was a machine powered by human bodies. Men and women were forced to work from sunrise to darkness, not to build lives, but to destroy them. They worked in factories, they dug in quarries, they carried stones heavier than their own bodies, they built roads, barracks, and industries that fed the Nazi war machine. Rest was rare, pain was constant. If you slowed down, you were beaten. If you dropped your tools, you were punished. If you collapsed, you were selected. Selection did not require words, a look, a gesture, a step out of line. The sign at the gate promised freedom through work, but inside Auschwitz, that promise was a lie. Work did not bring freedom. It brought exhaustion. It brought disease, and in the end, it brought death. In Auschwitz, labor was not about productivity. It was about control. And when a body could no longer work, it was no longer needed. Selections never stopped. They happened every day, sometimes multiple times a day. A doctor stood in silence, no questions. No explanations. A brief glance at a body, a finger pointing left or right. One direction meant labor, temporary survival, more work, more suffering. The other direction meant death. Children, the elderly, the weak. The sick, often separated from their families in seconds. Mothers from children, husbands from wives. Victims were told they were going to shower, to clean themselves. To rest. They were given soap, towels, a final lie. The doors closed behind them. Darkness filled the room, then silence. Bodies were removed, burned in crematoria, turned into ash. Ashes were scattered in fields and rivers. No names, no graves. No markers to say they ever existed. Death in Auschwitz was not emotional. It was procedural, not chaotic, not personal. Efficient, calculated, industrial. Human lives reduced to numbers and then erased. As the war turned, the Nazis erased evidence. By late 1944, the sound of war was getting closer. The front lines were collapsing, and the Nazis knew the end was coming. Crematoriums were destroyed. Documents were burned. Anything that could prove what had happened was meant to disappear, but people could not be erased so easily. Prisoners were forced onto death marches. Thousands were driven out of Auschwitz in freezing weather. No food, no rest, no mercy. Anyone who fell behind was shot on the spot. The roads filled with bodies. Villages and forests became silent graveyards. Even as the camp emptied, the killing continued. Then, on January 27, 1945, Soviet troops arrived. What they found shocked the world. Survivors barely alive, skeletons wrapped in skin, children who could no longer speak. They found barracks filled with disease and warehouses filled with evidence, shoes, glasses, suitcases, hair. Proof of millions who had entered and never walked out. Auschwitz was liberated, but liberation could not undo the damage. The camp fell silent, but its memory never would. Auschwitz was not an accident. Auschwitz was a choice made when power went unchecked, when silence replaced courage, when people stopped seeing others as human. This is Auschwitz, a place where names disappeared and people became numbers, where lives were measured, sorted, and erased without mercy. Ashes replaced voices, silence replaced screams. This is what happens when power forgets humanity. Power rises, power falls, but the victims remain. Follow for real history. This is the shadow of power.